by order of the council.
Plus thousands of Dixon's calculators from only $3.95.
To most people that are not electricians, and quite possibly to electricians too, the big electrical regs book can seem a little bit daunting. I'm only trying to replace this broken socket in my bath, but it's telling me this RCPO is the wrong one, and this 1mm cable isn't good enough. And we'll find out once I'm qualified whether it becomes any less daunting. With its 624 pages of regulations, diagrams and charts, practically anything that an electrician or anyone working with electrics needs to know is in there. You can feel like you're going back and forth to try and find the regulations that are applicable, and then you find out that that regulation doesn't exist. For some reason, I had it in my head that there was a regulation that dictated the floor area that would be expected for single phase and 3-phase supplies. I know, a bit stupid, right? Well, in reality, it's demand, the load that's more applicable. You'd look at the amount of load compared to whether that can be supplied through single or 3-phase. To relieve some of our stress over the number of pages, some of them are the contents and the index. There's also a few blank ones in there too, where you can add notes. I'm yet to find this feature of any use, and I think for my upcoming exam I need to have a clean book without any cheat sheets. Moving on then. Every 10 years or so, we then expect our book to be rewritten with a new cover colour and everything that you knew before being changed. In reality though, this is never really a problem because these are usually changes that we would see coming, and it makes sense as the electricity industry evolves. But it hasn't always been this way. The first electrical regulations came out in 1882 and consisted of 4 pages. Yes, 4 pages. It was quite a new thing for homes or dwellings back then to have electricity, and it was mainly for electrical lighting. They hadn't at that point invented a whole range of plug-in appliances that we just take for granted now.
4-band radio recorder. This lightweight Bush Ranger portable TV, now under £65. Plus thousands of Dixon's calculators from only $3.95.
The bigger the sale, the better the bargains. Dixon's sale.
The first edition was called the Rules and Regulations for the Prevention of Fire Risks Arising from Electrical Lighting. Whew. At this point, this document was put together by the Society of Telegraph Engineers and Electricians, who put together a committee to come out and to make this document. These rules and regulations are drawn up not only for the guidance and instruction of those who have electric lighting apparatus installed on their premises, but for the reduction to a minimum of those risks of fire which are inherent to every system of artificial illumination. There should be, in connection with the main circuit, a safety fuse constructed of easily fusible metal, which would be melted if the current attained any undue magnitude, and would thus cause the circuit to be broken. It is most essential that the joint should be electrically and mechanically perfect. One of the best joints is that shown in the annex sketches. The joint is whipped around with small wire and the whole mechanically united by solder. Oh, I'm glad we're not soldering them now. By order of the council. Subsequent editions were issued as IEE wiring regulations. In 1992, the British Standards Institute and the IEE decided to sign an agreement which made the 16th editions of the wiring regs to British standards. So we now come to know it as BS 7671. Do you know, that seems so random when you first started training, but as time goes on, it's just common. It seems like, yeah, it's obvious now. It then came under the IET, the Institute of Engineering and Technology, with every new edition providing more information to improve on what we have before. Take, for example, our 18th edition. They've added requirements for energy efficiency, surge protection, and arc fault protection. Again, helping us to appreciate that some of these pages are not relevant if we take out the sections that most people won't need, like the entire chapters 61 through to 63, Or maybe section 721. The book starts to become a little less daunting. When I was first introduced to the book, I was encouraged to not read it like a book. Don't consider every regulation, rather to consider the overall sections and chapters to find the different things. For example, part 2 is our definitions. Part 3 gives us the general characteristics of supply, where information is considered over the type of supplies that we might have to a property. For example, single phase or three phase, and the different types of earthing arrangements such as PME or TT, to name just two. Next up, part 4, that looks at protection for safety, whether it be from electric shocks, overcurrent, thermal effects or voltage disturbances. These sections consider what type of fuses and MCBs we might use, and even where we would put these devices. The other day I was talking to an electrician who reckons that there's going to be a natural EMP, electromagnetic pulse, due at some point in the future which could knock out all of our electricity. He's bordering on conspiracy theories if you ask me. So, chapter 44, protection against voltage disturbances, is for him. Then there's chapter 46, which looks at isolation and switching. An important chapter in my view. It considers the different reasons that we might want to isolate or switch off, such as mechanical maintenance or emergency switching off. Regulation 461.2 tells us that a TNCS system that the pen conductor should not be isolated or switched. I wonder, is this an easy mistake for DIYers to make? Part 5, selection and erection of equipment. That was a mouthful. There is a lot in this part, from identification of conductors by their colour through to considering voltage drop, proximity of wiring systems to other services through to earthing arrangements. Chapter 56 considers safety services such as emergency lighting systems and fire detection, fire alarm systems. It's quite a small chapter which points to other BS standards that need to be met. Moving on to part 6, this covers inspection and testing, both on new circuits and periodic inspection and testing. Then we get to section 7, which covers special installations and locations. For example, the first section is section 701, locations containing a bath or shower. The general electrician would probably use this section quite a lot, but other sections such as 710, medical locations, is going to be used far less commonly. The ones that I hope to use in future are sections 712, solar voltaic power systems, and section 722, electric vehicle charging installations. Part 8 looks at prosumers. I recently took a visit to Keele University to see how they've been implementing solar and wind generation and how they manage their energy systems. I'm thinking about a video on that. Let me know in the comments if you want to see it. They have a limited grid connection, and while they could get a larger connection, to upgrade their grid connection was gonna cost them millions. So they've been managing their demand based on the generation that they have. Regulation 822.1, their main objective, it talks of maximising self-consumption in connected mode, which effectively means that the grid doesn't have to deal with the massive sways of generation and usage and keep that management within these microgrid ecosystems. The words prosumer electrical installation is used all throughout this section, and the book gives us a picture example. A big part of prosumer installs is energy management, either by load shedding equipment or monitoring devices. Again, going back to Keele University, they would turn on and off heating and AC depending on the wind and solar that they had at the time. I think they considered forecasts as well. At home, I do a similar thing with something called Home Assistant, which allows me to control inverters and to control loads to provide me with the most financial reward for the energy that I use and generate. Everyone knows Colin Furze, don't they? And he turned his average 3-bed semi into a house that had an entire secret bunker underneath. Maybe slightly less exciting and definitely more niche, but I plan on turning my place into a mini power station, both for energy production and for grid balancing. It's all got to make sense financially too, but we'll see, hey? Next, we get to our appendices. Some of these are really useful for working out circuit design, such as current carrying capacity and voltage drop in Appendix 4. Or Appendix 6, which talks about the model forms for certification and reporting. Appendix 15 has some useful diagrams which show all the information that we need to understand the basics of rings and radial circuits. We then have some tables, followed by our index. To me, the index is one of the most powerful tools in this book. You only have to search for a word that links to what you're looking for, and you can generally find the specific regulations that you need to find. Have I just explained how an index works? Oh man. Anyway, well there we have it. One great big book which covers everything that we need to know. One thing I'm not sure about is how to keep this book in good condition while I'm out using it regularly on work. Okay, it might be that when I'm working away I don't need to look at it for every job, but I want it in the van and I won't want it to get trashed. If there's any electricians watching this and they found good methods for keeping this big and expensive book in good condition, then please let me know in the comments. Oi, don't just say leave it at home. Talking of expense, this book is not cheap, and I understand it costs money to produce a book, but with this being a standard that electricians are expected to keep, I really think this material should be available for free. Perhaps a PDF version that's accessible online for free, whereas the book having a charge to cover printing at least. But I also understand that the IAT needs to make money, hence the large cost for the book. But looking at it from the outside, it just seems a bit weird that the standards that you have to follow have to be paid for in order to read and follow them. Next week's material looks a little deeper at some of these sections of the big book. I'm undecided whether to kind of skip over this altogether or whether to cherry pick a few subjects that I quite like and talk about those. Perhaps I'll pick the effects of harmonic currents on balanced three-phase systems. Until next week, Battery Man out. Next week I'm going to explain how miniature circuit breakers work by using them wrong. And don't forget to like and subscribe and click on this video which YouTube recommends you'll like.